What happens when you get two black men who are podcast hosts on the same podcast that are business owners that have been through some shit in their life? Well, you're about to find out. And that's what we're doing today with Izzy Baker. My man, we just did yours not too long ago. I know you're pumped out a little bit. They'll be kind of close, but welcome to the show. I'm excited to get into it. And boy, are these listeners in for a little bit of a different ride today.
Definitely. I'm excited to be here because I got a lot to say. So,
like always. Well, let's start with a little bit of background of you, where you're from, how you were raised, and then let's get into what you're doing nowadays.
So I'm from St. Louis, Missouri, currently live in Houston, Texas. Moved out here in 2012 for school, the Texas Southern University, graduated with a degree in English, minor in sports management. But I grew up, two-parent household until it wasn't. Both my parents divorced when I was around 8 or 9 years old, and then it was joint custody. So that was grow up like that. I've always had friends, always been the person who had multiple groups of friends, which is something that was kind of critiqued or, picked at. But as we see now, it all works out. Always been a writer, always been funny, always, been wanting to do. I remember I told my dad when I was like a kid, all the dream jobs. And I was like, I wanted to play basketball, which I really didn't want to do. I just was like, it was that I wanted to play basketball. And then it was another one I said I wanted to do. And then a lawyer, didn't really want to do that. And then I said, I wanted to be a comedian. And I remember I told him that, and he just, anytime that would come up throughout the years, he would it was like the fly that snuck in your house and you got to kill it for it multiply. Like, let me get you now. It was like he would always try to no, don't do that. No, can't do that. Because it was either you funny or you smart. I've said this before on my podcast, and I'm also reiterating here. People don't believe, this generation has broken the mold for how things are supposed to be. I said this before. I don't know the technical name for the generation before me. I always forget. I know we're millennials, but the generation before the millennials, they have not an innovative bone in their body. They were taught, go to work, get you a job, call it a day. All the things they said we wasn't supposed to do, or that's stupid, is people are making millions of dollars for them. People are making millions of dollars playing video games. People are making millions of dollars, ranting, talking. People, so everything that they said we couldn't do, yeah. But long story short, I say all that to say, I'm here today because of my childhood. I don't regret it. I don't, want to redo everything. Good, man, and different made me who I am and what I'm doing today.
That's a great story because I'm not a funny person. I don't try to be funny. I think I end up being funny.
Yeah.
Just naturally.
Yeah.
And I love, part of what you do on your podcast, and now you have a different series, which we can talk about whenever you want to, by the way, but you bring up and talk about how humor and laughter is so tremendous for us in our health, right? In both our mental health, but also even physical health, like being happy and joy and whatnot. Talk to us a little more about that and why. I guess let me back up. When you were a kid and you were doing funny things and being funny, were you trying to do that to heal people, or kind of did you ever grasp why you wanted to be funny and what that did to people at that age?
I remember always thinking, also, by the way, just throwing out there, I'm not doing stand-up comedy. Not saying I won't ever. I'm just not doing it now, so don't go look up nothing. But I always remember saying I enjoyed making people laugh. It was something about it. And I'm a firm believer that God gives you signs of what a person is supposed to do at a very young age, even if you overlook it. And I remember, I'm telling this part of the story and then going to answer the question, but I remember when I was 4 years old, I did the whole routine off Barney. I don't remember this. This is what it was told to me. Did the whole routine. If that don't tell you that this person is going to be a star, I don't know what else will. Right. But I always remember knowing that I enjoyed seeing people happy by things that I said and would do, because it's different types of comedy. And for me, it's more so things that I would say. And of course, imitating people, I do that very well. I can I can be around you for a little while. I can imitate how your voice sounds, your mannerisms, So I think I just enjoy that. Some people just say, man, you just like the attention. I like that attention. I actually don't like bad attention. Some people just like attention is attention. I don't like bad attention, but I would prefer that.
And nowadays, now that you've grown up, How do you utilize that in today's world in what you do every day?
So there's a lot of things that I will be dropping sooner than later. But as of now, currently, I'm able to do that with my podcast, PSA, the Mental Health Podcast. I'm a podcast that caters to young millennial men who struggle with making healthy decisions. And mental health conscious millennial men. And when they say mental health conscious, because like I said on my show, the definition of mental health is the study of how we act, think, and feel. When people think of mental health, they think of mental illness. And a lot of times, even doing research, because I have a degree in English, which we'll get to my business in a minute, how that all ties into that. I'm a great researcher, and I'm just, in other words, nosy. And a lot of the funniest people have the most trauma. They are typically off in the head, whether it's diagnosed or not. They, some of the most creative people, don't take it there. Kanye West, R. Kelly, both throwed. You know what I'm saying? Those are two of the most more common examples, but they're usually people who are the most creative and funny. They off something happened to them. There's something. So a lot of things did happen to me. More so there was psychological warfare, but I'm able to take my podcast with something serious. Mental health, having a conversation, making it relatable, interviewing those in the mental health and wellness space, but also going back to my roots because I never stopped completely, but I lost interviewing people like myself. And I want to go, and I'm going back as I'm preparing for season 9, interviewing people like me that way we keep the relatability there. To this day, some of my most streamed episodes are with people who no one even knows. And I think it's the relatability, it's the discussion, it's just that free flow conversation. So now I'm making a big distinction going into season 9 between expert interviews and peer-reviewed interviews, and not just the topics, but even like the format is about the same, but it's slight alterations.
Talk about being a black man, and you've had a podcast longer than I have and have a lot more going on, but talk us through starting one and trying to get this thing up and running when really back then it was, I was just old talking white dudes, really. That's all that was around.
Yeah.
Talk us through that journey and kind of the things that you've had to learn and overcome.
Well, like I said, when I started my podcast, it was 2018. So I literally started a podcast off of what it was, a divine revelation, because I had never really listened to podcasts. I think I maybe heard the term, but the kickoff for the podcast and then start to the pandemic. So I was 2 years ahead of my time, and also the type of podcast I was going for, because when I was starting my podcast and when people heard I had one, they assumed, oh, it's about to be Charlemagne the God, the Breakfast Club, you just tearing everybody up all day, every day. And if I would have went that route, I would have been on. You know what I mean? I would have been on the Shade Room, Ball Alert, blowing up TikTok. I would have been on. And I'm thankful I didn't go that route, because I'm all for entertainment, but any product that I produce, and I'm saying this everywhere I go, and when you see my name in the future, anything I produce, even in its entertainment, there's still a purpose. So it's not just to entertain. But getting started was definitely interesting for me. I went through a 2-week boot camp, self-imposed boot camp, studying podcasts. Who was the hottest podcast? Who was in the top 10s? What were they doing? Trying to see what made them stand out. This is before video was mandatory. It's still not, but it kind of is, just depending on who you are. But for the most part, if you start a podcast now, you kind of need to make it, visual as well. And so who was hot, who wasn't? I took a 2-week boot camp. I started, February 2018, first episode. And here we are, March 2025, getting ready for season 9. As crazy as that sounds.
That is crazy. And bravo and kudos to you. But going through a whole learning journey is important for business owners. One, just us as humans. But, on our podcast, we speak a lot to minority and women business owners specifically. When you were trying to learn from the top and whether you're implementing or not, what did you find in that research that you thought was the holy grail? And then now when you look at it, it went shit.
Honestly, back then, probably the route that I went, I'm thankful for, but it's so many easier ways to do it now. Going through, searching top 10 podcasts in this, top 10 podcasts in this, or top 5, and looking up, then going down the rabbit hole of, okay, well, who is the podcast? Who is the host? What is their podcast about? What do they do? Well, now you could literally just type in the AI everything you're looking for and then pull it up, or go on YouTube. It's so many podcasts now. So it's much easier to do those things now to see, who, and I suggest that for anybody in trying to get into any field to go research who's doing what you're trying to do, because at this point everybody's done it. It's now, of course, you got to flip it and do it in your own way, but everybody's pretty much done what you're trying to do.
How many episodes do you think or how many guests have you think you've interviewed over the 9 seasons? Will be 9.
I'm sure over 100 now. I'm sure over 100 from, like I said, people that I went to college with, people who I've been to go to brunch with, and then people who are on ABC and the Oprah show, and who've been on Lifetime, and who've been on huge platforms with millions of followers. So, it's all about just having the conversations, pushing whatever. I tell people all the time, when you got something you want to push, come on. I'm Mr. Put You On. Like, I believe in putting people on. If I know somebody that can do something, I'm gonna go get them. If I don't know somebody, I know somebody that knows somebody, and that's just kind of how I am as a person.
What's been the common theme across your guests that when you're discussing the conversation, and obviously it may be different topics, but when you've interviewed that many people, is there a common theme that comes around, like either who they are, what they talk about, or what it means to be successful where they're at?
So with that, like I said, when I try to pick the brains of people, especially with a mental health podcast, being that I'm not the expert, more of the advocate. And it's interesting because I used to catch hell and kind of some digs about that when I first started. And even sometimes now when people say, which I know they haven't listened to it if they come from that angle, but they'll say, well, you're not an expert, so why are you having a mental health podcast? But that's the thing. I'm a storyteller, I'm a writer. So the narrative is pushed as if, which is not a lie, I'm my target audience. I'm the young mental health conscious millennial who struggles with making healthy decisions. You may know better, but you don't always do better. And so I'm picking the brains of those in the mental health and wellness space: nutritionists, therapists, counselors, doctors, financial experts, people who know how to repair credit. All of these things, these topics, the central in mental health and wellness, all about growth, personal growth, so they're all in that arena. And then the flip side is when it's the peer interviews where these people might not be an expert in anything. They just might be a teacher, or, but as long as they kind of fit the mold. And for this season, when it's those, which now I'm introducing a new segment called Man to Man, the goal is for those men to be a young millennial man. So that way it makes sense. But of course, the experts, that can be anybody. As long as you're an expert in that topic we're going for. Anxiety coaches, I've had them all, so that would be the central theme. I hope I answered the question. But
yeah, a little bit. Love that. I was asking, when you're interviewing them, like when I'm interviewing people just like you, right?
Yeah.
I know there's a common theme around them. All of a sudden I know, like, for example, most of mine they care about people over money, right? It's not about money. Life's not about money to them. It's about, how can I take my passion and help as many people as possible?
Yeah.
Right. And that's exactly what you said, right? How can I use my humor to do good? Well, now I have a mental health podcast. How can I bring those people on? That's what I was thinking. Like, when you're interviewing guests, what's that like common theme that you feel from them that they give that message to your listeners?
So, okay. So basically, remember the principle is decision making. So whatever I'm interviewing them about in the mental health wellness space, or even, like I said, peers, the goal is this is the issue in the episode, and you're the person who can help us and my audience overcome this. So if I do struggle with anxiety, how can I get over that? If I struggle with, having thoughts that are all over the place, how can I get past that? If you're the person who, I have bad credit, you the credit man. Okay, credit man, what can I do to do that? This is an issue for me. If you are somebody who, I'm fat or I'm big and I want to lose some weight and my nutrition is off, but I don't know how to go about it, you're the nutritionist. You know how to do it. An episode I recorded coming up, which is kind of part of that man-to-man segment, is I'm 30, now what? And that's just a relatable conversation for men who are in their 30s, whether, usually younger, but early 30s or about to turn 30. And it's like, I'm not married, I don't have kids. Am I, useless? Am I not doing enough? So basically just overcoming something. No, there's a decision that we struggle with, and this episode is going to be the antidote for that.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And following that, because that allows others to be like, well, that episode might not be for me,
Right.
but this one is, and grasping it differently. And that's what we're doing in 2025 with No BS Wealth, is we're bringing on people like you to, one, just bring realism to what's out there in the world and going on. We see it so often that people, one, they don't think they can be successful. They don't even know what it looks like. They don't know there's people like us out there. And so they get this feeling of alone, right? And they have two decisions, two paths. Go the hard route, figure it out, and go do it myself, or go the easy path, right? Whether that's drugs, gang, just being poverty and just woe is me type of situation. And that's what we're trying to do and bring more resources to. Coming from St. Louis and being raised in St. Louis, I've heard a lot of stories, especially from my barber. Shout out Martavius from St. Louis. Did you ever feel like you needed to get out? Like, was that part of you getting out to Houston and stuff like that? Or I'm going to let you just take it from there. Talk to us through that, right? Because there's people who are listening to this right now that are like, I want to get away from where I'm at. Talk us through your little situation and what it's meant for you to kind of get out and do your own thing.
So before I touch on that, remind me where you from again?
I'm from Omaha.
Okay. So that's still Midwest, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think sometimes with Midwest, people from the Midwest, I've talked to people from Chicago, from Detroit, from, we always say the same things. And we didn't ourselves necessarily grow up in the hood. Some people did. I grew up around people that was on that. I wasn't, because my parents didn't play that. So I'm not going to act like I was out here gangbanging. Don't get it twisted. I didn't see some stuff. And I got friends that was on that. Some of them still on the block selling, my parents didn't play this. So I'm not even going to act like this is me. I don't have nothing to prove, and I've always been the anomaly anyway. But what I can say is it definitely was a pressure to get out. My dad had been planting seeds for me to leave, to get out. But little did he know, I didn't want to be in St. Louis, no way. I remember being at 10 years old telling one of my aunties I wanted to move to New York. And then I ended up going to New York as an adult. And that's still one of my favorite cities. And I had never even been back then. But I just knew I was going to love New York. And I definitely do. It's one of my favorite places. And she was just saying, typical, and I don't know if you can relate, but typical kind of response like, well, they have such hard winters and their city's so big. And, how would you do that? So fast forward to around time to go to college. When I was watching some show, but some reality show at the time. And I know they was in Miami. Might have been Jersey Shore. Because they know it was one point in Jersey Shore they used to kind of bounce around. And then it was also one period where a lot of shows was in Miami. But anyway, I was just like, I want to go to school in Miami. I was dead set on going to school in Miami. And so I remember telling my mama that. She was just kind of like, oh, you can't go there. That's too far. What if something happens? The typicals, that would call it the St. Louis answer. What if something happens? And I remember my junior year, me and my friend who actually, him and his now fiance actually have a house built out in Houston in the outskirts. And I remember telling him when we were at a party, coming from a party, junior year of high school. And I remember saying, looking at the party and we was leaving, I said, I'm over this. And it was like, over what? I'm over being here. Like, I'm ready to go. I'm tired of this. And at the time, it was looked at like, what is wrong with you? Like, he's crazy. What do you mean you're over this? Like, is this a suicide note? Like, no. But I was over being in St. Louis. Like, I'm so tired of this. It's the same old stuff. So ended up, going to Texas Southern. That was the only school that I visited that I paid an application fee for. And I obviously ended up going. But best decision ever. Got out of St. Louis. My daddy even said like the easiest way to get out the city is to go to school, and in some people's case, go to the military. That's the easiest way to get out the hood. Go to the military, go to school. And when I was a teacher, I even had some students. And although Houston is not necessarily a bad city, but the lifestyles that they live were contrary to that. So I would tell them like, hey, go to school, get up out of here. Because you hot on the block. You know what I'm saying? You been places, boys said they was going to, unalive you. I said, go to college, get up out of here. Even if you don't stay, just, So I think that the pressure was definitely on to not be there. And then looking back, some of the friends that we were around, you saw the ones who didn't do much and they're still there. And then you have the other side who they aren't doing bad, but it's just like they're okay with just this. And when you say that to so many people, the people that get it, and the ones that don't. So in their minds, it's like, what are you talking about? Like, you're crazy. But the people that get it, like, you okay with just this mundane life. Not to put her business on blast, but I'm going to. My grandmother, 90 years old, worked the job. And you know what I mean? Thank God she's still alive. But it was situations where you worried about money. You think I want to be 90 years old, worried about money, and you try to sometimes, not intentionally, but we know how old black folks can be, and kind of shame you because it's like, in her mind, I told mama today, she don't think I'm doing that with my life. You know what I mean? I can tell she ain't said it, but she had mind to kind of make comments like, I'm concerned because, I'm a full-time ghostwriter and podcaster. So she does not get it. She just doesn't get it. And when she hears writing, I think she think like back in 1940 when people was writing news articles and stuff for 25 cents an hour or something crazy like that. I don't know what she think. I'm like, don't get twisted. I done had some slow months, but I done had some money that I was big months. I was big bank Hank. You feel me? So it's just like, but she just don't get it.
I posed a question on Facebook. No, a statement. I said that, make sure I quote it right. I'll probably mess it up. But I said, do not give to your elders. This is the punchline, right? You got to pull people in. Mark, you got to pull them in, right? So I pulled them in. And I'll summarize it just real quick because people go on Facebook and look at it and all the comments below it. But I essentially said it's kind of like that whole thing of when you're in the airport and they say, put your mask on first and then you can take care of somewhere else. I said in our society, the Black culture, really minority society, we do this really, really poor thing of we try to support so many people in our life before we get ahead. And guess what happens? That means we don't get ahead. Right. And then the cycle keeps repeating and repeating itself to where you're always living in poverty or barely above poverty for generations. And one comment was saying that we should always take care of our elders. I would rather be bankrupt and take care of my elders than get ahead. And I wanted to ask you, kind of like put that out there and ask you from your situation, both from your personal, but all of those that you interviewed and people you see out there. What is your opinion on that? Should you take care of yourself, help them, but take care of yourself, make sure you're good and set and squared away before giving a whole bunch? Or should you just give everything you got and, live with the consequences of being in poverty the rest of your life?
I definitely, I get called selfish. So that should be the answer to that just alone. But I think that a lot of times people get caught up in trying to take care of everybody else. The theme, I just said this recently on the episode, the theme of last season, unintentionally, the topic of people pleasing came up a lot. And as an ex-people pleaser, I know that, because for me, it was like, it's no point in pleasing y'all because you still don't like me. And any chance you get to throw it up in my face, you can, you will. Or anytime you do something, we highlight it in that moment. But then if you do something bad, we keep bringing it up later. So for me, when I realized, I know everybody's story is different, but I know for me, when I finally caught on, I said, I might as well do what I want to do because, it's not going to work no way. But I think with that being the theme for last season, and so many people in this generation are people pleasers, that somebody needs to go on a course or something, to overcome people pleasing, because that's the main thing. And until you take care of yourself, it's so cliche, but how can you pour forward my cup that's half empty? You know what I mean? How can you pour for an empty cup? Like, so if you give it to everybody else, but you never take care of you, it's like, how does that work? And then in my opinion, you're enabling them. Huh?
I said, I don't think it personally can work.
It
right?
can't. And then you're an enabler, because at that point you're enabling them to be so reliant on you. So now they can't even learn to stand on their own because they know, well, she'll do it, or well, he'll do it.
Yep. And then you're going to pass that down to your kids and their kids. And then that's why, to me, I think that's why a lot of families they get broke up, because at some point someone stands up and says, no, I'm not going down that path.
Yeah.
I'm out. I'm going to do my thing.
Yeah.
I think a lot of that comes back to what you talked about with your grandmother a little bit, although she subconsciously was telling you this a little bit, but that making you feel guilty, right, for being selfish, or in her terms, basically podcasting, making you feel guilty because you don't have a real job. I think that has a lot to do with our generational, I don't call it trauma, if you will, but a lot of us have gone through that, of specifically millennials, of saying, you're supposed to be doing this at this age and this age and this age and this age, and kids, wife, you know what I mean? And we're put to this pressure that we shouldn't fit into. And I believe that we've allowed the younger generations to just live their life. And for craziness, they make a lot of money doing really stupid things. But I think it's because we allowed that. We didn't say, oh, you have to be doing it this way. We literally just said, go do it. Just go do whatever. Figure it out.
Yeah.
Now that you've been, we're not young, right? But we speak to them a little bit. What do you say to that now? Like, where are you in terms of what a job looks like? Now, what you do podcasting, that's a job. I mean, writing is a job, but it's part of your lifestyle. How important is having things part of your lifestyle more so than like I'm clocking in, clocking out?
Well, that's the beauty of it, because as someone who had a career for a good 6.5, 7 years, I know the format to follow. Like I said, it's probably the writer brain in me, so everything is like a template. So it's like you can still treat it like a regular job. You can still treat it like a 9 to 5, 8 to 5, whatever you want to call it, and work for this many hours, take a break, go to the gym, go eat. You're not dedicated to a set schedule. And I don't want to get too much in this, because I do know that how it looks for me now is temporary, because I know this is kind of a wilderness season per se. And this is something I'm going to go into more on my podcast. So you have to tune in for that. But for anybody, you can run it like a regular job. Just pretend it's a regular job. If you can't do work at home, go find an office space, which is something that, I might look into at some point in the future, get you a little sweet or something. But go get you an office space if you just can't work. Some people just can't do it. You can go to a Starbucks down the street and just like, I'm going to be here from 8 to 5, get cool with the people that work there, make friends, make it something out of it. And make it like a big old thing. But as far as, so on the last part, what was the question again that you said about what would I tell the younger generation?
Yeah.
So again, being an ex-teacher, I used to tell them all the time. I said, and they didn't get offended, but they were shocked when I said, everybody in here is not going to college. They're like, what? But I was like, but you're not. And I want to teach things that will last outside of these lesson plans that you can interpret. And some of them even follow me on Instagram and they'll DM me randomly bringing up stuff I said I don't even remember saying, but that stuck with them and that's good. So besides the funny stuff and how I used to roast them all day, they like that. I don't know why. But anyway, I think that I would just tell them to, these skills that y'all are using and you think are for fun, that you think are for fun, I go with that, are actually the basic skill sets that you're using in school. You don't even realize it. Like, for instance, people will shame somebody, say they went to college and they're a YouTuber and their YouTube is them pranking people all day. That's a storyline. You had to come up with that story. You had to come up with who was going to be involved. You had to come up with the setting. You had to come up with the scenarios of what will happen when I do this. So that's a story. You done created a storyboard. You know what I'm saying? You can't just, those are the foundations of literature in English. And again, that's the English brain talking. What was the rising action? What was the conflict? Who did it involve? How long did it take? What was the aftermath? What was the end? Will this go to a part 2? So it's just that alone is a storyboard. And then you don't even realize it. So if you're doing a podcast about pop culture and mess, what is the structure? How did you introduce the topic? How did you, so it's so many ways of things that we use that we don't even realize. It's just that when you're using it for something you don't care about, you're not going to use it in some cases. But then when it's something you're actually interested in, you're a pro. So just pay attention to, I would say to anybody, any younger generation, what is it that you really enjoy? What gets you excited? What makes you, like, I would love to do this. Anything you said you would love to do. If you want to be an actor, you need to get into that. But see, people don't want to start at the bottom. And that's their problem. You want to get into acting, you could easily go get on YouTube with your phone like this and do monologues from your favorite TV show, a TV show you didn't watch a million times. You can go and find on Threads, Instagram, Facebook, people who, hey, we're shooting this movie. We need people to do it. It'll be free. I say it all the time. Tubi better not ever call me, because I'm going to be on the Tubi movie and you're going to think you're watching HBO. You're going to think you're watching Stars every time I come on the screen. They're going to be like, am I watching Stars? No, you're watching Tubi. But because I'm here, it's going to look like this grand production. So, but people don't think like that. People don't want to start at the bottom. People think that everything is supposed to happen overnight. And it takes 10 years to become an overnight success. And I'm on year 7.
Amen to that. Seriously, people, listen to that. I'm gonna have to the team cut that part out, because legitimately, it is a grind. There is no overnight success. There are random ones, but that's as random as the lottery, by the way. Like, it just happens. That's gonna happen. But the rest of us, you have to put in that work. I attested to being an athlete. You have to train day in, day out for those little opportunities that pop up. And when those opportunities pop up and you nail those, that's when success happens. That's when that leap happens. So I appreciate that. I'm gonna use that one a lot on the clip.
Please.
As we get towards the end of this, I always ask 2 questions. One, what was your first money memory?
I would have to say probably getting, honestly, money from allowance. Probably it wasn't that much, but you know what, I could say that, but I think what really stood out was when I had my first job my senior year of high school. I'll say that because it was other money situations, and some of them were, but I do know, no, I'm a lie, I'm gonna go back. It's actually a few, but the one I'm gonna name is the first money memory I got was when I was given money to go to White Castle. And my dad gave me the money, said, go into White Castle and get the food for us. So I got the food and I came back with like $13. He said, that's all you wanted? I was like, well, nah. He said, whenever somebody gives you money and says, go buy it, don't try to be modest. Use it, because they gave that to you for a reason. And that really stood out to me. Now, fast forward, I did that same thing with my mom the next week, and she got offended when all the money was gone. So, but I still, right, but I still saying, well, like if I gave you $40, don't kind of come back with, oh, let me bring back 20. Just take it and use it because it was given to you for a reason. So.
Good. You already got the follow up. I was going to say, how does that affect you today? Like, what would you do today? How does that change that? But you nailed that one.
Yeah, I'm not modest at all. Don't ever give me no money, because I feel like if I gave you some money, I wouldn't expect that. So it's just like, don't tell nobody. And even it's like with loaning money, like I don't expect it back subconsciously, because it's just like, people fall out over money all the time.
Yeah. Basically, like I'm gonna loan you money, and we can say this is when you're gonna pay it back. But in my mind, I already know I threw that money out. Like it's gone. But
yeah.
What is one thing you want to leave our audience with that they can take and implement in their lives right now as they're listening to take that next step forward in their journey?
I'll just go back to, because it doesn't matter what age it kicks in. What is it that you want to do with your life? And if you don't have any kids and not married yet, this is the time to do it. Not saying that you can't do it once you're married. It's just a little easier when you're single to do it. But sometimes people won't get that push until they are married. I don't know. But I know that you need to figure out what it is that you enjoy doing. What is it that you like doing? What is it that just excites you? You know what I'm saying? People are literally paid to give commentary on reality TV on YouTube. They will watch every reality show and give their commentary. And they get $10K a month. Come on, people. You can do whatever you want to do. You know what I'm saying? You was going to watch that show anyway. I got a friend, I like anime too, but he loves anime. I said, you need to start doing commentary on something, because some of your takes would go crazy. I'm like, you need to start doing commentary. And I think he's about to start. I'm like, you was going to watch that show anyway. So you might as well go ahead and make it like a job. We live in a world where some people's like, people can't just have hobbies. You can, but if you don't love your job and your job is a struggle, I have to question, maybe you need to do something with that hobby.
Amen to that. So. Amen to that one. Hey, and everybody listening, like, share, comment, all that stuff, not because algorithm, I really don't care. I want you to be able to get to Izzy. I want you to allow us to be your resource. DM us, email us, contact us, obviously subscribe, because what we're putting out is only going to help you. And if it helps you, I know it's going to help a lot of others. So I appreciate you. Obviously, we're going to have all of your stuff in the description and all the socials and all those things for your podcast. But truly go check him out and his new series as well. But hey, I appreciate you coming on, and I can't wait for the next time.
Absolutely.